Thanks, Laura.
Wonderful. Here we go. Mark Maxwell with UC Merced on his climate action plan and carbon neutrality by 2020. Go ahead, Mark.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for joining this webinar today. And thanks, Laura, for putting it together. Really appreciate it. You know, we always want to share the great things that we're doing here in the UC system. We look at ourselves as leaders, and we are doing a lot of great things in other areas too, not just climate action. At the end of the presentation, I'll give you a website that you can visit. That's our website with all the resources, everything that we're doing on the campus, and it has all the resources as far as all of our plans that we're doing, including the climate action plan that you can go into detail. So I want to thank you again. Wasn't able to turn my video on. I just had surgery and I didn't want to scare anybody today. So thank you again, appreciate it. And so I've been here with the university since we broke ground in 2003. Since I've been here at the university, I have managed the whole green building program. I've had multiple roles as far as construction management. Construction is what I've been in all my life. And I'm also an international commercial building inspector, Calgary inspector, lead AP, all kinds of good stuff. So thank you for allowing me to speak today. So I'm going to talk about our climate action plan and how we got there. The details again are in our actual climate action plan that I have on the website. So a little bit about the campus. On-campus buildings, we just finished our 2020 project, which doubled the size of the campus. We now have 31 buildings, all LEED certified, mostly platinum, and it's approximately 2.5 million square feet. And then we have about 251,000 square feet of off-campus buildings that we also have to report emission-wise for our climate action plan. We have Castle over at the Castle Air Force Base, Mondo Building, the Promenade, Parkade, Chancellor's Residence, Fresno, and our Olive Warehouse where we store all of our surplus. This picture here is the latest off-campus building that we built, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. It's an all-electric building. So if you look at it as a pie shape, we have about 12% of off-campus buildings, and then 88% of our buildings and our emission inventory is on campus. I'm stepping back because this is kind of how we got to our climate neutrality goal, which we achieved in 2018, 2 years ahead of our 000 commitment of 2020 and 7 years ahead of the UC system-wide sustainability practices goal. At the time, we had about 6.7 metric tons of emissions. 40% of it was scope 2 indirect emissions from purchased electricity, and 60% scope 1 direct emissions from natural gas and mobile combustion. So if you're not familiar with scope 1 and 2 emissions, scope 1 has to do with direct emissions on the campus, which is your natural gas and any emissions from any of your campus vehicles, any type of combustion type equipment that you use to operate the campus, whether it's from leaf blowers, lawnmowers, any vehicles that you have that are on the campus that are basically running your operation. It does not include air travel and commuting to campus. And then scope 2 is direct emissions from purchased energy that you purchase for your buildings, or for our case, our campus, which is PG&E. So when we look at what it's going to cost the campus to pay for basically the energy that we're going to use for the next 19 years is what we have projected in a business model that we use, which is called FOVIA, which does all of our forecasting. This was purchased through the Office of President. Most of the campus use this tool. It's a great tool for helping you build your case for carbon neutrality. We were looking at spending about $93 million. And that's a net present value at that time in 2017. In 2018, we were looking at just by itself spending $4 million at that time, net present value. And then in 2037, it was basically going to double. So basically your energy costs are going to double in 19 years. So I'm going to just talk a little about our plans and how we're going to get there, or how we were going to get there. The first thing you always got to focus on is occupant behavior. Building occupants can significantly affect the energy use intensity of a building, independent of the building design. Programs that address behavior will help sensitize building occupants to energy consumption and address significant future loads on the UC Merced campus. So we have programs like Green Labs program, where we go in and we certify labs for their sustainable operational performance, kind of like LEED, but in a very much smaller nutshell. We focus on the equipment they use, how they operate the lab, turning off lights. We look at energy efficient freezers. UC worked with several manufacturers to get an Energy Star rating for ultra low freezers, -80 freezers, which a lot of labs use now. There was never any Energy Star freezers 4 years ago. And so we worked to come up with those. And now we have freezers that use 2/3 to almost 3/4 less energy than a typical ultra low freezer. We have a green office program similar to Green Labs. We come in and we certify your office for being sustainable. We have an eco rep program on campus that we work with. It's more or less on the housing side, where students will work with housing to come up with programs and initiatives that they can help out with and help with the behavior side of the occupants, because they're living in the buildings and they can significantly contribute to reducing energy consumption. You have students that'll come in and bring in freezers and microwaves and all these extra things that we don't plan for when we put together our energy models in our buildings that increase the energy load. And so we work with not just the residents with the students, but we also work with labs, we work with offices to try and get rid of that equipment. We have centralized printing locations now. We have centralized kitchens that they can go to use a microwave or store their lunch, so that we don't have all these excessive plug loads in the buildings. And it's a pretty good program. And we have most staff and basically staff, faculty, and students that are working with us on this program. And then we have an Energized College program, which is a separate program that we work with they're over in the Bay Area, and they'll help us and work with us. They'll hire a fellow that's already graduated. That fellow will work with and hire interns on the campus to help us with a lot of our programs and initiatives on the campus, and also work with faculty and other folks as needed to help our sustainability program. The campus also implements a 5-year energy efficiency plan that we submit to Office of President. We come up with all kinds of energy saving programs, retrofits that we can do on our campus that'll help reduce energy consumption. We have LED retrofit programs that we can do. Anything on the campus that we feel that we can increase our energy efficiency, because a lot of our campus originally when we built it was T5 lighting, and now we've switched over to LED, and we're continuing to switch over to LED and other types of energy saving equipment and programs on the campus. And then in our plans, we have on-site solar. And the plans for this is to incorporate renewable energy through the campus to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and the impact. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. We have a biogas project that we're working with a county landfill in Merced off J59. And we'll basically take the gas that they currently are flaring off into the atmosphere, and we're going to pipe it to the campus and run turbines, basically generators, to generate electricity, and then also reduce the emissions as we burn it through these combustion type motors. And then also we're going to take the heat off that, and we're going to use that heat to run our boilers that are currently using natural gas. And so this is kind of free to us because we're going to pay approximately 14 cents a kilowatt hour for the biogas. And we're kind of getting a 2-for-1 deal. We're going to get electricity, and we're also going to get the natural gas supplement. We're going to mitigate our natural gas on the campus. Not all of it, because our boilers only provide 1/3 of the campus heating, but at least we'll be able to reduce the emissions on the campus with natural gas.
And Mark, I just have a question on this. So this biogas collaboration with the landfill derived out of the goal of achieving LEED Platinum, and you were looking for opportunities to get the right points. Is that correct?
No, this is more on the side of our climate neutrality.
Okay.
To get LEED Platinum was more on the renewable side. The more renewables we had, that helped out with one of the energy credits on renewable energy. So that was a big step, because all the solar that we put on our campus really got us into platinum. That was the biggest step that got us there. But this will help out in a lot of areas as well too. So it'll help out in some of our energy modeling and as well for LEED.
Perfect. Thanks.
And then the biggest thing, obviously, is we're not able to reduce all of our emissions at the campus level, right? So you're going to have to buy offsets, RECs for renewable energy or the energy side, and then offsets for the gas side. And we do have to purchase some offsets that we procure from Office of the President. Electrification of new buildings. So as I spoke about gas, if you electrify a building and it's all electric, you don't have to come up with offsets to mitigate your gas portfolio. It makes being net zero, because you're not having to go out and purchase offsets. You're actually able to get there on electrified building by having all renewables. So the campus has actually made it policy, and in the policy it stipulates that all new buildings after June of 2019 have to be electric. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on what we've done. So to date, we've installed on-site solar, and we first installed the first 1 megawatt solar array in 2009. We recently, in 2018, installed and completed another 4.2 megawatt PV. That PV is actually putting out close to 5 megawatts. And so right now, with the energy that we have coming on, being provided by renewables, is about 50% renewable for our campus, because we're still a small campus. And then stepping back, we've always pursued energy efficiency. LEED was the biggest thing, right? And so we made a commitment on our campus to design all the buildings 30% better than Title 24. And that was, any code cycle, basically. So when we first started, it was getting pretty easy. As we started getting into the newer code cycles of Title 24, it started getting harder. But we were still mandating our design teams to pursue that, and we were getting there. And then we used something called the UC whole building energy performance targets to help reduce energy consumption. And so Title 24 looks at a certain percentage of the building, but it leaves out about 30%, of unregulated plug loads and other equipment that they don't look at for process loads, right? So they don't look at lab equipment, they don't look at certain types of Energy Star rated equipment that we use on our campus, freezers, refrigerators, and other stuff. Well, the whole building energy performance targets that were developed by UCOP looks at everything, including lab equipment, ultra low freezers, the stuff that they're using. So we're able to do a deeper dive. And so when you do that, we look at the EUI, the energy use index of the building, the total EUI of the building. And some of you are familiar with that. And I can go and I can help you out, after the presentation. You can ask me questions, but it's the energy use statistic per square foot, basically. It's the energy you use for the whole building per square foot. And so when you do that, you're able to work with the design teams and do a deeper dive on how to save energy. And they work with you as well. They go, hey, you're using a lot of energy over here with the stuff you buy on campus. It's not all of our problem here. And so that's why we really did a deep dive into ultra low freezers, because they use a lot of energy, as I mentioned. You can reduce your energy load on ultra low freezers by 2/3 to 3/4%. So when we did this, we were able to really do a deeper dive, and it also helped when the code cycle got better, Title 24. We were able to still achieve that 30% because we were going above and beyond what any design team would do. So, and we're still doing this, and I can talk about this, separately if you have questions on this, because this will really help you in energy performance. And then energy efficiency projects, some of the existing ones that I mentioned in the past, I said that we were retrofitting. We did an LED retrofit of the entire campus because they were all metal halides, and we changed out everything to LED. As you can see in this picture here, those are actually LED light fixtures in the background that we use for exterior lighting. Well, in the past, those were metal halides, and they were using a ton of energy. We were able to reduce our energy by over 0.75%, and the payback on that type of retrofit was within 3 years. And then we did an LED retrofit of the Joseph Gallo Rec Center gym, which was a huge benefit to that building as well, because the gyms are auxiliaries and they have to pay their own utility bills. And he was very happy that was done and that we did that for that building. And then here's something that most people don't know about is the UC Clean Energy Program. So we are, in essence, an energy service provider, the Office of the President is. And what they have done is they realized that a lot of campuses are going to have a hard time getting renewables onto their campus and enough to, help with their climate neutrality program. So what they did back in 2015 and earlier, they started planning this earlier in 2012 and 13, is they wanted to go out and actually procure renewable energy products and projects that can help with bringing campuses clean energy to the campus through the PG&E grid. And so they built several projects. We have a 80 megawatt solar array down in Five Dogs in Fresno County that they built and completed in 2016. And I believe there's 7 campuses, there's maybe 8 now that are able to get that renewable energy to their campus with a zero emission factor through PG&E to our campus, using them as the transmitter for the energy. And so when we did that, we also completed a few more projects, some biogas projects, one in Louisiana, Streetport to be exact. And then there's one that's up and running in Rialto, California, and one close by in the Riverside County, I believe. And that one, if it's not up and running, it will be up and running. And basically that is giving the campus emission-free energy to the campuses that are taking it through PG&E territory. So now we have energy, not just on the campus level behind the meter, but also in front of the meter that is emission-free. So we are basically zero emission on the energy side with energy, electric energy. And so now we're trying to mitigate the gas is the biggest thing right now. So UC has done a great job in helping clean up our emission profile coming to the campuses. So stepping back again and talking a little bit more about electrification of buildings, we do have a building that came on the campus that's off campus, the downtown center, campus center, that is all electric. The bummer part about this is that it's not in PG&E territory. It's through TID, and so we still got to figure out how we're going to mitigate that emissions. Right now we're mitigating it through offsets, because we have to claim off campus building as well, as I mentioned in the past slides. So as I mentioned in the past, some of the challenges what we are having is negotiating a contract with Merced County. They're a great partner, but they don't understand the PPA, because that's what we're doing is we're doing a PPA through them. And it's just a little challenging because they have their own way of doing business. We have our own way of doing business. And so we're getting through the hurdles, but it's slowed things down quite a bit because of that negotiation. Mitigation of natural gas is a challenge, and it's a challenge to everybody because, you know, when you have existing boilers on the campus, or if you have a cogen plant on the campus that's using natural gas, I'm sorry, it's going to be hard to mitigate that in a long while. So those are some of the challenges. What I can recommend to you all, if you're a design team, or if you're part of the, you know, the design period and planning these projects and designing them, is go all electric. And it's not any more money. We've actually found that we've saved almost $2 million on that electric building on downtown campus because we went all electric. When you go all electric, you definitely got to pick a great design team that knows how to do this type of design. And we used Integral at the time, and they said, yeah, we know how to actually reduce the capital cost on your design because we've done a system that is integrated into your slab called radiant heated and cooling flooring that takes less time in your schedule, less equipment because you don't have all the ducts, the VAVs, the fan coiling units, because you just have lines going through your floors, and labor. And they were right. When we installed that system, we saved almost $2 million. And then on top of that, it's energy efficient. And we used several ground mounted resource heat pumps to provide that system. We do have one HVAC system that we did, one air handling unit that we did install in the building as backup that provides ducting to the south and to the west sides of the campus because we were kind of in fear that we were going to have some increased heating loads on that part of the building, and we're able to ramp up that unit to cool down that side of the building. And it was only during the months that were going to be hot. Outside of that, we were good. But thankfully, we have arcades and sunshades on that side of the building that did reduce the heating load on that building. And so, believe it or not, we were able to turn that system off, and we're not using it. And that was still included in the capital costs. So, but you always want to have a backup plan, right? And it's a great project, and I can give you a lot more detail for any of you out there that want all the details on the design of that building. The P3 project was a big challenge because if you're not familiar with P3, basically it's investors that are coming in and building the campus. And there's a lot of different strategies that you can use. We used one where they were the owners of the buildings for 39 years on our property, and they basically maintain and operate the buildings. They don't take out the trash, they don't do the landscape, but they do everything else. So when we have issues with those buildings, we've got to do work orders through them. When we were designing the building, they were okay with meeting Title 24, but they weren't comfortable with doing the energy modeling with our energy performance targets. And so we negotiated to pull out that compliance, which kind of hurt them because they're paying more for energy because they could have done a better job on energy performance on buildings. But it's still a win-win. They're still LEED Platinum. They're still performing really good on the energy side, and they're a great partner. Because without them, we would not been able to expand the campus, double the size of the campus to meet the student growth that we were projecting on the campus. And then I talked about certifying green labs and the plug loads reduction strategy that we had on our campus. That's been instrumental on the behavior side of the campus. And I can definitely, help any of you guys out that want to help reduce plug loads within your building. I have staff on my campus that can work with you that run our programs. So UC Merced's plan to become carbon neutral. I mentioned kind of in a nutshell in those little pie charts, how much emissions we had. Well, this goes into a little bit more detail. This was our emission history and our forecast of metric tons of CO2. And in 2018, we had, around 7,000 metric tons of CO2. And so we planned on mitigating that with the existing 1 megawatt of PPA that we had. We were projecting that 4 megawatts that's already online, flood reduction strategies, the clean energy program, which in the past what's called the Wholesale Power Program, the WPPP, and then the biogas project, which is coming on board. So this just kind of gives you in a chart here of where we're going and how we're going to get there. And then obviously the gray is the offsets, which is quite a bit, but that's what we have to work with right now for a campus, which isn't really a whole lot compared to all the other campuses. So the recommended portfolio includes actions that are strategies for our carbon neutrality achievement and identified plans and opportunities for future. As you start looking at the portfolio, you start thinking, okay, there's other.
FedEx.
No, if we didn't use FedEx, sorry, they were not very sustainable. But these, we identified plans and it helped us to get there. So what's it going to cost? So I mentioned in the past it was going to cost us $93 million to just go business as usual. When we implemented or talked about our recommended portfolio, we told our staff and the experts on our campus that were managing the financials that if we do the recommended portfolio, we'll only be at $77 million. We're going to save the campus $17.17 million just alone if we do the recommended portfolio. And then when we do the offsets, if we went business as usual, we'd have to spend $2.5 million in offsets. If we went with the recommended portfolio, it's only $1 million. So we're actually saving $1 million in offsets. So we're going to in total save the campus $18 million to get to climate neutrality. And so that was a no-brainer. Everybody jumped on board with that. So we're doing good. We're heading in the right direction. We achieved climate neutrality 2 years earlier in 2018, 2 years earlier in our goal, 7 years earlier than our system-wide goal of 2025. And to be honest with you, I don't know if any other campuses are even going to hit the 2025 goal unless they buy a lot of offsets, and it's going to be very expensive for the other campuses. So we're kind of lucky. We are very lucky. We started off sustainable, and we're very fortunate to be where we're at, and we've had a lot of great partners. So I just want to play this quick video, if you don't mind, and show you this great video if I can figure out how to do it. There we go. A little slow right now. So thank you, everybody. Oops, sorry, I'm gonna move on. So yeah, so that's everything in a nutshell. Again, there's my contact if you want to reach out to me. Laurel can also forward everybody the presentation and the contact information. Please visit our website that has everything there, all the programs that we're doing that I mentioned, and then some. We're doing a lot of great things, hopefully achieving zero waste here within the next year, and some other great programs. Any questions?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions, Mark. Thank you so much. This is Sheila. Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to know that I didn't hear anything on the transportation side. I know it's just really focused on building and energy saving. And the UC Merced is probably a commuter campus, but has there any work done on doing more of a green transportation, sustainable transportation, or active transportation? Let's say, I see a lot of parking lot on that aerial photo you shared. So has there anything been done in that level? And then my other question is that it seems that you have kind of achieved above and beyond on what the standards are for the green building. Is UC thinking about systematically kind of putting all these achievements into let's say a guiding document that can actually become available to other designers and public sectors or private sectors?
That's a good point. I like that second question. But let's talk about transportation right now. We're always trying, because you're right, we are a commuter campus, and we offer a lot of shuttle services and rideshare programs and discounts for using low emission vehicles coming to the campus. By code, we have to put in those parking lots, right? And so we're kind of limited on what we can reduce as far as the parking lots and all the other spaces that we have available. But they are doing a lot of great things. We've looked at Proterra and other types of sustainable transportation for our buses, which are all electric buses. And we put together business models at the time that they just weren't feasible, right? Kind of like LED. When it first came out, it wasn't feasible. You did it if you had the money, but you didn't do it because the timing just wasn't right and the costs just weren't right. That helped, that instigates the timing. And so, but we are continuing to look at electric vehicles, and we've done several commute mode surveys on the campus that, that we want feedback from everybody. And how can we be more sustainable? How can we help you guys out in rideshare programs and other programs to be more sustainable? So I've hired more staff this past year, and one of the projects on my staff was to look into that, and that's one of the things that we're looking at. We do have a transportation section on our website that you can look at on some of the things that they are doing right now, because again, it's scope 3. We're not in such a hurry, though it needs to be done now, to focus on that area. We're focusing on scope 1 and 2. That includes just the emission fleet that's on campus, which does include transportation, and they are doing a lot of good things on their fleet side. A lot of electric vehicles, electric golf carts, and other emission-free type vehicles. So, thanks for the question, because it's a great question. I get that asked a lot. There's so much to do. You can only tackle so much with the staff that you have because of the bandwidth that you have. But there's a lot of great opportunities out there right now, and then we're going to be looking into that, because that's really the next step that we have, right, is to look at scope 3 and to look at the transportation side.
Mark, Sheila had a question, a follow-up question in the chat, if electric scooters are allowed on campus.
Oh yeah, I've got one myself. Everybody rides electric scooters, so definitely. I do want to step back though on the guiding dock. I think that's a great idea. Of creating a guiding doc on all the achievements for design for design teams, right? We do, and I think it's on our website as well. We just completed a design document for our Green Labs program that guides the design teams on how to design a sustainable lab, and I took that because we had a guide already on how to design a green lab for existing PIs, the faculty and researchers on campus. And I was thinking to myself, well, why don't we take a step further, because we have new buildings that we're going to be building on the campus, so that we can give it to design teams so that they can implement in the design. So it makes it easier and reduces the cost or reduces the cost completely because you're already implementing the design. And so not only, you know, do you have a sustainable lab, but you're also there and you can achieve a green lab certification, you know, high green lab certification because, you know, it's already sustainable design. So that's a great idea. I really appreciate that question. And, you know, I'd be more than happy to work with you on one too, if you would like to help create that document.
Wonderful. Thank you for the answer. The next one that had their hand up was Michael Mayfield. Michael, do you still have a question? You took your hand down.
Yes, I still have a question. I was trying to gather my thoughts a little bit. Thank you so much for the presentation, Mark. I had a question about the reporting metrics you guys use. You were talking a little bit about it in the beginning, and I missed it. I know at Fresno State and at the CSU level, they use a reporting called EcoVox. I think you had referred to the reporting scheme you guys are using as Novia, maybe. What did you say it was? And can you talk a little bit?
I'm sorry. It's Phobia, and that's for our financials side of things. So when we're trying to build the case, you know, on what it's going to cost, and what are the details? What are you doing, right? You know, what are you doing to mitigate everything? And so that's what you've seen in those charts earlier. That was pulled out of the Phobia tool. But what we do for actual reporting is for verification as we go through TCR, right? They have their own reporting tools that we fill out that our third-party verifier uses because we have to have a third-party verifier before we go to TCR. The climate registry, you know, is the big institution that certifies anybody that's doing climate neutrality, right? It was developed by the EPA. So that's what we do for our reporting. That's our verification that we're climate neutral. The Phobia tool is the business side that we use for our campuses, and it's a great tool, guys. If any of you want a recommendation, email me and I'll give you the contact because it's an awesome tool and everybody's using it.
It's very helpful. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. And the next one is Brent Auenheim.
Hi, yeah. You know, you mentioned that UC Merced sort of started off at a pretty good state because of the new construction. And then you mentioned something like some of the other campuses might have to buy a lot of offsets. And I was wondering, you know, can you talk maybe a little bit, and maybe this doesn't apply to UC Merced, but I'm thinking, so if I'm on a campus that needs a lot of work, do I like take my worst performing building and then figure out what's the demo cost and the replacement cost and then subtract out what I'm going to be paying for offsets for 20 years? I mean, does the cost of offsets ever like significantly figure into the cost of the demo and replace?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely, right? Because and that's what I was showing earlier in that tool is that if we did nothing, right? And it's the same thing, you know, if you did nothing and you were to procure offsets for that building you're talking about, that worst building, and I would use that building actually, and you show what the cost of offsets will be because they're going to be huge, right? And then you go through and then you come up with a model where you've retrofitted the building, it's energy efficient, it's using less energy now on the PG&E side, on the gas side, and now this is what offsets were going to cost, and then multiply that, you know, with all the other buildings you have on campus that aren't energy efficient. You know, there's a bunch of different scenarios you could use to, you know, to do that, and you'll find because you're gonna go through and you're gonna retrofit those buildings down the road anyways. They're gonna come to the end of their useful life, you know, maybe sooner than later, you know, if they're energy hogs, and you know, and you're gonna show those cost differences. And so when someone's looking at that and going, you know, well, we kind of want to do we kind of want to demo and do a new building or retrofit the building, do, you know, renovation or whatever. But now that you showed me that model, you know, I'm definitely going to step in and we're going to do this, because if you're already committing to climate neutrality, this is going to really motivate people to want to do it sooner than later. So,
and I imagine that the demo costs as far as carbon goes are significant. So that would also figure in.
Yeah, I mean, we look at operational costs. We really don't look at the construction costs.
Okay.
I mean, you might, and that's totally up to you. But we don't, because we don't have anything to demo, and I don't think we have really in the past. I know we've demoed a few buildings because we look more at the operational side of costs. But you can track But if I was you, I would track that cost, just to have it, for your own reference. But it's not something that we look at when it comes to climate neutrality.
Okay, thanks.
I apologize. There's going to be a helicopter coming over me here real quick, so I'm outside.
Evan, you had your hand up briefly. Do you still have a question? Evan Leslie?
Yeah, I do actually. I was wondering about the radiant heat in the concrete. Two questions. One, typically, at least in San Diego, when you heat those up, it takes a lot of air conditioning to cool it back down later on in the day with the change in climate. And I wonder how, the efficiency of radiant. And then typically radiant in concrete is more hydronic, but you mentioned it in the context of electricity. So those are my two questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, because we're using heat pumps that are using electricity and not gas, right? Instead of a typical HVAC system that's using gas and electric, to run the heating and cooling. So the heat pumps are used to do both, and they're all electric. So yeah, and it's all hydronic. So it's cooling down the water and shooting it through your slabs. And when you design a building for energy efficiency, the first thing you're looking at is the exterior and the cladding, the design, sunshades, the direction, all that, right? So all of our buildings are concrete. So that helps keep the interior of the building, the conditioning of the inside of the building more energy efficient, because it'll stay longer. And so what you're doing is, because of concrete, which is a huge, massive thermal storage, and that's why we do it in the concrete with the radiant flooring, is that it does take a while to initially heat or cool the building to your desired set point, but in the long run, it's more energy efficient to maintain. And so when you have the outside conditions changing so dramatic, even like in UC Merced, it's changing so dramatically that it's going up and down, that the building, it's not affecting the building, because you're in concrete or whatever type of structure you want to use. There's other types of systems, because we do have wood buildings, but we're using an EFIS system for our stucco. That's almost the same, really close. And so you can have such a dramatic change in the outside temperature or variance, but it doesn't bother the interior load. And the energy models and plus the the actual commissioning in the building shows it. So that's what helps when with those loads. And so you're not going to see a dramatic change in the operation trying to adjust those temperatures in that building. And I'd be more than happy to share the models and connect you with the design teams that have helped design that technology, because we use them because they did finish a SMUD building in Sacramento that was with that same system, and they were very successful. So that's why we picked them. Did that answer all your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. A good question, because yes, that does make sense. And that was a lot of the questions that we had as well.
Mark, have you ever looked at concrete alternatives for your buildings?
Well, I mean, I know concrete's a lot of money, but that has always been proven to be, the best system to use when you're trying to build an energy efficient building, because it does stop a lot of that temperature variance that you have coming from the outside to the inside. But the only other system, like I said, is the EFIS system, because we had a lot of wood structures, mostly housing buildings and a couple rec centers that were wood. And so what the EFIS system is basically, it's wood, 2x6 walls. The walls are insulated. Then you have a 3 or 6 inch foam on the outside. And then you have your lath and plaster system of stucco. And so it's kind of like, you know, concrete, but then we have the extra insulation. And that's been proven to be very successful, less expensive because you're going with wood. But the system itself is kind of a little spendy, but still a lot less than doing a complete concrete building.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions? I don't see any hand raised right now. All right. Well, it seems like we covered all the questions, and we're at the end of our time. So thank you very much for joining us today. If you enjoyed and got something out of this webinar, please consider becoming a member if you are not a member yet. Members really help us support our green building program and also show the demand for green building in our region, which is very crucial as well. We'll be following up with sending you the recording and the presentation. Yeah, thank you again, Mark, for your great presentation. I very much enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of others that enjoyed it. I hope we get a lot of inspiration from this. And yeah, feel free to reach out to Mark. And
Yes.
We look forward to the next opportunity to connect.
Yes, thank you, Laura. And please send everybody my email contact. I didn't have it on the slide, so I apologize.
Okay, perfect. I will. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.